Ellen White Reconsidered, a series of presentations for people with questions about Ellen White and her writings. Today's presentation is How We See Ellen White. Seminar 3 is coming up, but I just wanted to share a quick video with you. I'm preparing for Sabbath today, but I just had noticed something that I wanted to share. I've previously talked about how that the critic sometimes gets Ellen White wrong, and they pass it along to another critic. And this is how somebody thought was an appropriate way to represent Ellen White. This is a screen capture from a channel. You can see the identification on the top. And the representation is to say that Ellen White brings bad fruit. So somebody who saw this image on this channel asked me, is that a real picture of Ellen White? So I started looking, and I discovered that the real picture came from this website, which is Dirk Anderson's, and he used it on his website. And so one critic borrowed it from another critic. Interesting is that that image is not the actual original one. Here's the original. That's what she actually looked like. That was, and I found that also on the internet. And what's interesting is that Dirk Anderson, who posted this picture that was passed along, has a book which he attacks Ellen White and calls her prophet or pretender. But notice the image that he has on the cover. It's this one. So he knew what she looked like, and yet he chose to do that. Well, I went digging to try to find it, and I found on the Ellen G. White website, here's the original picture that was taken from. You can see here this is from Elmshaven, and the helpers that are in this picture. There's some interesting things about the picture, but here you can look it up if you want to see who those people are. Let's blow it up a little bit bigger. There you are. And you can see this is Sarah McIntyre, who is an assistant to Ellen White. It helped her with her care. You can see Ellen White has arthritic hands. She also had it in her shoulders. So she needed some help doing some common things as she's getting older. Here's her son, and then the others are identified. Okay, what else can we see from this? Well, here's a little better image of it. And I noticed some funny things about this picture that just, like, these faces don't look natural. There's something about it. I don't know how they took pictures and why it would look like this. But in particular, this picture has been replaced. That's not what her actual face looked like. And this was cut out and then maybe put back in, and it left some ragged edges that had to be filled in, and it wasn't filled in very well. So I've just been curious about these kinds of pictures and what could be done to improve them. So here's what I did. Hence, oh, by the way, you can see the picture where it really came from. So the image, her eyes are not even as dark as you see here. They're kind of more gentle, but there's a look to her mouth, probably because of her dentures. That's what I'd say. All right, so take that one back off and take a look when I've enhanced it. This is what that lady actually looks like. I found another picture of her and filled it in and colorized this. So you get a little bit more of an idea of what Ellen and these other people with their pleasant looks, what they look like. And I did one more thing that I just thought might be interesting. I discovered a program that animates the images. One more thing before I go. I discovered an article in the Review and Herald in 1985 that people had been requested to share their remembrances of Ellen White. I'm going to share one of those stories as we finish up. The article was entitled, I Remember Ellen White, and it was compiled by Jocelyn R. Fay as she received eyewitness accounts from several older people who still remembered seeing Ellen White in Ellen White's older age. So we'll go down here to this one story that I want us to look at. It begins right here. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see it better.
I saw Sister White many times, but it was at a camp meeting that I became personally acquainted with her. My father was responsible for all the books sold at the camp meeting. He and I were early risers, so we used to get up very early and walk into town, where the farmers brought their fresh produce. We were often there before the grocers were. I imagine my father offered to buy produce for Sister White as well as ourselves. He knew Sister White's tastes, and I remember his saying that she was especially fond of tomatoes. How carefully he picked them out. He also bought other vegetables and fruit for her, and we'd carry it back to the campground. When we arrived, he'd give me the sack to take to her tent. She would accept it with thanks and ask me to sit down and, busy as she always was, she would visit with me for a few minutes. Those little visits meant so much to me. I remember the lessons she taught me and made them a part of my life. I was baptized in the river that summer, and I always like to remember that she was present at the baptism.
I looked the lady up who wrote this story and found some interesting things about her. She became a missionary to China about 35 years. Here's her story. So, a little girl who carried produce to Ellen White became a missionary as a result of knowing the kind of person that Ellen White was. We certainly can see her very differently.
To keep up with the latest in this series, be sure to subscribe to this channel.